In 1617, a group of unscrupulous political operatives in Istanbul installed a mentally defective man as Sultan of the entire Ottoman Empire. His name was Mustafa I. Historians later referred to him as Mustafa the Mad, and he certainly was that. Mustafa spent his days babbling like an infant and throwing coins to birds. Occasionally, if he was feeling sporty, he would knock the turban off someone else's head. He was completely demented. The general population didn't know that, of course. The Sultan rarely left the palace, and when he did, he spoke from a script. But the people around him certainly knew. They preferred him that way. He was easier to control. Whatever you think of him, Joe Biden is definitely easy to control.
Okay, guys, I gotta say something about this. I wasn't gonna remark at all on the Alec Baldwin shooting anymore. I wanted to let it go because, honestly, the way the media has utterly fumbled the reporting of this story, we're not ever gonna know what really happened there. I stand by what I said in my original video, that I just prefer to start from a position of forgiveness. And, I mean, just because the guy is completely on the other end of the ideological spectrum from me, not just that, but the philosophical spectrum. No reason to condemn somebody. It's not my place to judge. I stand by all of that. It is a victory that this guy never gets to open his mouth again when it comes to gun control. You know, I'll celebrate that with everybody else. But I was going to let this go because I'm really worried about this story becoming a distraction. Clearly they're not interested in reporting it accurately because they haven't managed to do that yet. Even Fox News, and it's amazing, Fox News, the supposed conservatives, which we all know they're not, but even they are getting so many things wrong that are just basic gun handling information that they can't even get the terminology right. And I don't want the story to become a distraction from a lot of other things that are going on right now. The fact is, there have been a lot of stories also that have dropped in the last couple of weeks. I gotta tell you, I recorded an hour-long rant about the story that came out about the Biden administration saying they're gonna pay almost $500,000 a head to illegals Trump deported because of their emotional pain, right? I mean, and then I was like, whoa, hang on a second. And I went ahead and deleted the episode. Because that is so obvious, and I'm starting, the hackles on the back of my neck are standing straight up about something. There's something going on here. That last town hall, in quotes, you know, the one where Biden stood there with his fists up like he was driving an old Studebaker on stage for like 5 straight minutes? Guys, that's deliberate. Whoever's really running this guy wants us to see that. They know that anytime there's a microphone in front of this old bastard's mouth for more than a minute, anything could come tumbling out, right? They know that, and yet they're doing this shit anyway. Why? Why? And that story about the, whatever we want to call this, the reparations check, $500,000 a head, over $1 million per family to people who were deported for breaking the law. We're going to pay people lottery money for breaking the law, for breaking a federal law. Meanwhile, you get fired from your job if you won't take this vaccine. Like, it's a little bit too ridiculous. And it's got me, like, I was like, okay, hang on a second. I want to step back, and I'm not going to say anything for a bit. I'm in a wait and watch mode right now. And this little mini episode is going to be an attempt to use the Alec Baldwin story to explain why. Because what I'm going to tell you about the Alec Baldwin story could apply to anything else that's come out in the last couple of weeks. I mean, this shit's utterly ridiculous. The videos they released from the White House, like a week and a half ago, Kamala's fucking birthday party, and the bizarre conversations between her and Biden on the phone where it's just like, God, scripted doesn't even begin to cover how inhuman these people act. And that they wanted us to see this? Like we didn't already find their behavior off-putting enough? Let's get into this. The Alec Baldwin shooting. I'm going to go purely on what I've seen from Fox News. Fox News, the conservatives, in quotes, right? These are people who should know about guns. They should know about firearms. They should know about this stuff. Remember these 5 terms, and we're going to come back to them. You don't have to write them down. Misfire, prop gun, blank, squib, and gun malfunction. Okay, misfire, prop gun, blank, squib, and gun malfunction. I keep hearing those terms again and again and again on fucking Fox News. We're over a week out from the shooting. Now, all of those 5 terms have 2 things in common. 1, the news media has absolutely no idea what any of those terms mean, and apparently Fox is no exception. And 2, the news media, including Fox News, continually uses those 5 terms to describe what happened in the Alec Baldwin shooting incident, in spite of the fact that literally none of those 5 terms can, by definition, possibly apply to the incident in question. Now, this we know even from what scant information we actually have in hand. Okay, yet the conclusion to disqualify the above 5 terms still escapes these gigantic news conglomerates somehow. Folks, this is journalism 101. This is really, really basic. This is not even checking your facts. This is checking your vocabulary. And they're missing this? Even the network that pretends to be conservative is missing this? Misfire. Misfire is when a round doesn't fire. So this is literally the exact opposite of what happened that day. A prop gun is a movie prop. It's a gimmick assembled to resemble a gun, but has no firing mechanism. It only has a little spring so that when you pull the trigger, it returns to a starting position when you let it go. A prop gun is a toy gun, albeit a very convincing looking toy gun that does not and cannot fire any kind of projectile. It is not an actual weapon, it's a movie prop. The only way a prop gun is a weapon is if you throw it at somebody. So this cannot be what Alec Baldwin was holding when he shot somebody. A blank is a cartridge filled with gunpowder held in place by a wad with a functional primer. For those of you who don't know, around there's a casing, all right, which is essentially a little container. Okay, it's like a little can. One end of that is capped with the primer. The primer is just a little cap that when it's struck by the hammer of the gun, it pops, it explodes, it gives a little spark. On the other end of the casing is an open end, which is usually where the bullet goes, that you put the bullet in. And then in the casing, the empty space, the fuselage, if you will, is full of gunpowder. So when you fire the gun, the hammer strikes the primer bursts, sparks, igniting the gunpowder, which discharges the bullet out the barrel of the gun. That's how a round works. A misfire is when, for whatever reason, that doesn't happen. You pull the trigger, the hammer drops, nothing happens. That's a misfire. There are a lot of reasons why that can happen. A dimple on the primer. Okay, so that the hammer doesn't actually hit the primer because the primer's bent or wefted so that it's too far away from the hammer. So a blank is everything I just described, except there's no bullet. You've got the casing capped with a primer full of gunpowder, but instead of a bullet in the end, there's this little wad that they put in so the gunpowder doesn't come pouring out. Right? Now, when you fire, when loaded into a gun and fired, at very close range, a blank can strike someone with a hot chunk of burning powder, or it can hit you with the wad. Now, this is painful, and if you're close enough, it can be fatal, but it could not pass completely through one person's body and penetrate another, which is what happened in this instance, as far as we know. So this could not have been a blank. All right, so that's three of our terms right there. So far, couldn't have been a misfire. Misfire is when the round doesn't go off. It's not a prop gun. A prop gun doesn't shoot anything. And it wasn't a blank. There's no bullet in a blank. Now, squib and gun malfunction. A squib has nothing at all to do with what happened here. A squib is a detonatable gimmick set at the supposed impact site of a projectile or explosive, right? It's set off by a stagehand off camera to coincide with the firing of the weapon, right? So when someone is shot, the little spurt of blood that bursts from their chest, that's a squib. It's a little gimmick that's sort of taped under their shirt that the scene is filmed and someone pulls the trigger and then a stagehand hits a little remote control and the squib pops and spurts blood out from under the shirt, right? A squib can also be, when somebody throws a grenade and then there's a puff of smoke and debris that explodes from the ground. That's a squib. Now, obviously, the wounds on Helena and Joel were not squibs, nor do squibs have, anything whatsoever to do with the operation of a live round in an operational firearm. And our final term, the gun malfunction that the corporate media continually refers to, is what's called a hang fire, which is not a gun malfunction. It is a malfunction of the round. This is where there's a delayed ignition of the powder and the shot goes off sometime after the hammer has fallen and struck the primer. Okay, so you pull the trigger, the hammer hits the primer, and then for whatever reason, the gunpowder doesn't go off right away. There's a delay. So the person might be like, whoa, why didn't the gun go off? And they turn their hand to look at the gun or something, and then the gun goes off. And so they end up shooting off at an angle or something other than what they were aiming at. And so that's dangerous. But that's not concurrent with any of the accounts of the shooting. My point is, guys, why are we now, almost a week later, still hearing misfire, prop gun, blank, and gun malfunction? Why are we still hearing squib, for God's sake? Are they trying to keep concealed what actually happened here? Or are they simply this uninformed about basic firearm terminology? Answer, yes. So, was it fired? Was it, like some people have said, well, Alec Baldwin was throwing a temper tantrum about having to reshoot a scene, and he was pantomiming shooting somebody? We don't know. I don't even know what the source is for that rumor. Is that in character for him? I would argue it is, yeah. We've got footage of the guy beating somebody up over a parking space just a couple of years ago. It's conceivable that tough guy could have been waving what he thought was a fake gun around just to be a dick. Okay, I could see that. But I don't know that's what happened. Guys, you've got to stop. Like, everybody's doing this. I'm guilty of this lately, too. We get the whiff of something, and then we go with it like that. Okay, well, that must be what it is. We are in really dangerous waters right now as a culture, a country, and a society. We have got to make triple sure of our facts on everything. Because what I was talking about before, how we're just getting what would sound incendiary, what would sound scandalous, all this stuff. I think a lot of it is just to get a rise out of people. Corporate media obviously has a stake in pissing you off. Pissed off viewers are going to watch more. Sure, but that doesn't explain shit like this.
Really? Aw, Joe. Aw, I'm very impressed. Thank you. Mwah. Thank you. Oh, look at how gorgeous. This is my favorite.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh, I'm gonna hang this up with great pride. Thank you, Mr. President.
Harris-Biden administration is going to relaunch that effort and keep pushing further to make it easier for military spouses and veterans to find meaningful careers.
My sister and I, we grew up celebrating Kwanzaa. Every year, our family and our extended family, we would gather around across multiple generations, and we'd tell stories. The kids would sit on the carpet, and the elders would sit in chairs. So to everyone who is celebrating, happy Kwanzaa from our family to yours.
Yeah, you remember that one, right? Oh, by the way, Kamala Harris was born, like 16 years before Kwanzaa was invented in Long Beach in the United States? But it was this long-standing family tradition ever since she was a little girl that they celebrated Kwanzaa. This woman is a lying whore, okay? And we know that. But I'm really starting to get freaked out by shit like this town hall. Yeah, it's good for a laugh. But I'm telling you, they want us to see this. Right now, I might not podcast too much in the next week or so, because I'm not sure what I'm looking at anymore. There's a difference, as Schrodinger said, between a blurry, out-of-focus picture and a clear snapshot of fog and cloud banks. And like Schrodinger's cat. Everybody knows Schrodinger's cat, right? Is the cat alive or is the cat dead? Well, for the purpose of the equation, it's both and neither. Right? But what Schrodinger was trying to illustrate is that just because that's what the math says doesn't mean it's not ridiculous and doesn't mean it's true. And he concludes that speech by saying there's a difference between a blurry or out-of-focus picture and a clear snapshot of fog and cloud banks. All right, he wasn't trying to prove that reality's out of focus. He was trying to demonstrate that maybe the models we're using to predict reality are flawed. And right now, I think the information that I've got coming in is corrupted. I think it's the information we've all got coming in is corrupted, and I don't know what information anymore is trustworthy. There are too many things being missed by sources that I would not have expected to miss them. And I look at stuff like, why do they keep putting that barely alive skeleton of a man dangled on marionette strings? Why do they keep putting him on stage with these, Tucker Carlson called it absolutely right when it looked like, or no, it wasn't Tucker Carlson, it was that other guy. Can't remember his name. Anyway, one of the Fox News guys, but Anderson Cooper, or as I call him, Propaganderson Cooper, was speeding through his questions as if he were trying not to laugh. I just have to ask, what is going on? And I'm not sure I know anymore. It's obvious that all this stuff that's going on with the markets and everything is intentional. But it's also obvious that they want us to know it's intentional. I mean, I can't see it any other way. My brain won't let me see it as they're just that oblivious, that nobody has that little self-awareness. Like, people with crippling Asperger's have more social graces than these people. So I'm in a wait and watch kind of a mode right now. Anybody, hey, hit me up. Let's talk. I need input from brains other than my own right now, because I am just I'm at a loss. The last 2 weeks of news have just this whole thing with the, yeah, we're going to pay illegals whose feelings were hurt by Trump $500,000 a head? That can't be real. And they just announced this? Talk to me, guys. And we'll talk again soon.
He's strong and that he's resilient and he's ready to take on the job. Joe is going to heal this country just like he healed our family.